Welcome to another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. If you're a first-time listener or returning for more, I'm so glad you decided to join me today. With this podcast, I'm on a mission to redefine leadership for everyday life. And what I mean by that is I want to make leadership accessible for all so that we can take leadership principles and learn how to apply them in everyday life, no matter what position you find yourself in your career or in your personal life, how we can influence and impact others. In today's episode, we're going to be digging into how to live a balanced life. Today's episode is entitled Navigating the Wheel of Life, a Blueprint for Balanced Living. And I'm sure you're wondering how in the world I'm going to pull off explaining how to balance your life. I know many people, as soon as you say balance and life in the same sentence, they say this is not possible. You cannot create balance in life, but I want to share a practical tool with you today that I think you will find to be helpful in really redefining what balance looks like in life, and maybe it's not what you had thought in the past. Just so you know, in these first 5 episodes of the podcast, it's just me riding solo, talking about how you can lead yourself more effectively first before focusing on how we lead others more effectively. So today is really a continuation of what I was talking about in previous episodes when it comes to self-awareness and knowing who you are as a person, as a leader, and now really looking at how to create that life that is truly fulfilling for you, and you can give attention to those areas that are most important. So I really wanted to start today by addressing what I believe to be a common misconception when someone's talking about a balanced life. Oftentimes, if I say the word balance, many people will say, well, it's not really possible to create balance because that would mean I'm spending as much time on my personal life as I am my professional life, and one always needs more attention than the other. And that's not what I mean when I say balance. We're not trying to achieve balance by spending an equal amount of time in each area of life. Instead, we want to look at which areas need the most attention and be more intentional about prioritizing those areas and looking at how we can really spend the time and energy and effort on those things that are going to help us to achieve our vision, feel more fulfilled, and then, of course, as a leader, have greater impact. So I want to give an example of this in particular. In different stages of life, this can look very different. Obviously, right now, I am in a stage of my life where my career is very important to me. I'm building up my business. It needs a lot of energy. It needs a lot of time and effort. Whereas there are people who are in a stage of life where maybe they're exiting their business or they're not a business owner at all, but they're at a place in their career where they're starting to prioritize more family life, family time, looking at what life can look like in retirement or beyond. Depending on what phase of life you find yourself in and where the priorities lie, you might realize that you need to spend a little more time on something than you have in the past. You also put pressure on yourself and maybe even have higher expectations than what you can achieve if you think you're going to spend as much time on some of these areas as others. So if you're feeling guilt that you can't give your family the attention that you feel they deserve from you because you're focused on your career, well, if you're at a point in your life where your career has to be your focus so that you can get into a place where financially you're secure for your future, and then in turn get to spend more time with your family and enjoy life in the way that you'd like to, and maybe travel and do all the things that you envision for a quality family life, it's going to take an investment of more time up front in your career to achieve that goal later. Can we achieve balance by doing things that we can feel fulfilled in doing with the family now? Does that mean we give all of our attention to the career and spend no time with family at all? Of course not. It can't be like that. But that's really what I wanted to start off by explaining what balance really means. It's not necessarily equal attention. It's the attention that is in alignment with your purpose, your vision, all of the things that I talked about in previous episodes when we were discussing self-awareness. If you've taken time to reflect on those and do the branching out challenge and really consider what is important to me, what do I feel my purpose is, what impact am I trying to have on the world, how can I use my strengths and the things that bring me joy to have greater impact. If you've taken the time to reflect on those things, then what I'm talking about today, being able to prioritize different areas of your life, might come a little more naturally because you've had the forethought. I also want to talk a little bit about how this is completely dynamic, not static. If I think about my life up until this point, I'm in my mid-30s. I have had different periods in life where, my career was everything to me. And it's really hard because, especially as a teacher, you want to give your students everything. I actually had a period of time where I said, I will never have children of my own as a teacher because I would feel like I am not giving either my own children or the children in my classroom, one or the other, what they deserve. And I didn't want to feel like I was having to split my time between them. I knew myself. I'd go home in the evenings. I'd either stay late at work until 10 p.m. even, go home super late in the evening, get up, do it all over again. And spend all weekend long on stuff for the classroom. And I just couldn't imagine at that time what it would look like to have a family and to, commit to giving my own kids the level of attention they deserve, because I felt like I'd be doing a disservice to my students. So that was always a really big struggle for me. But what happens when you try to strive for this perfect balance is you really have nothing left to give. I remember specific times when I was teaching in Fairfax County and I was commuting from pretty far out. I had run myself into the ground so much that I would drive partway to work and I'd have to pull over in a parking lot and take a 15-minute nap to drive the rest of the way to work. And that was kind of a scary time for me because I had realized that this has gone a little bit too far. I was prioritizing my career so much that I was not taking care of myself. And to this day, I believe that my Lyme disease probably would not have hit me as hard as it did if I didn't have such extreme stress levels already going on in my life. A lack of sleep, all of the issues that go along with not giving your physical body the attention that it deserves. It really kind of led to burnout. And what happens when you don't give your body the attention it deserves is it will get the attention one way or another. So I had shared before how I ended up on bed rest. Well, think about how my time flip-flopped then, because I went from giving my career 100% of my attention and having nothing left for anything else to I didn't have my career. I was not able to help my students at all. So I went from giving them all I had to being able to give nothing at all. And that was a really hard place to be in and hard reality to face. So what I want to share with you today is something called a Wheel of Life. And those of you that are maybe more local might recall me doing a session recently. The young professionals group from the chamber came out and I led them through an exercise here with the Wheel of Life. I've briefly mentioned it on a previous episode, and a lot of my clients are aware of what I'm talking about when I say the Wheel of Life. This concept is what really helped me to achieve my definition of balance and really be able to craft my life in a way in which I felt like I could control and protect what needed my attention and know that I am doing what it takes to reach my vision for my life. So this is a tool that many people have heard of. There are so many different versions out there. If you search Wheel of Life, you are going to come up with so many different options. What I did was I continued to modify my own version after working with clients for a couple of years and having conversations about different areas of life. I just kept making changes and changes and changes until I felt it was right. I'm really happy with the version I use today, but I want to explain how this tool can help you. And just so you know, I do have this tool online for download, free download. You can use it. So if you're listening to this, I'm going to walk you through how to actually use this tool in your own life. You're going to have to do some visualizing unless you're on my website and download it and have it to look at as you're listening to this. You might even want to download it, come back, listen to the episode again, and go through the exercise. But a wheel of life is literally just that. It looks like a wheel and spokes of a wheel. Of course, my amazing branded version is actually the cross section of a tree. It just looks like a pie broken into different sections. And those different sections represent the different areas of your life. A lot of times people see life in two buckets, personal and professional. And that's it. Personal and professional. That's it. And I refuse to see it that way because there is so much that makes up my life that leads to greater fulfillment for me. And the tool is used in a way that you're sitting down and reflecting on how satisfied you are in each area of life that I'm about to share with you, not based off of anybody else's definition of success in that area. And that's a real struggle, let me tell you, because am I where I thought I was going to be at 35? Absolutely not. Did I think I would be married with a family and be in a completely different place in my career? Definitely. It's not where I thought I would be. And if I compare myself to others, it would be very easy to score myself differently on this. But this is based on where I see myself for the future and how fulfilled I am now. What is your current level of satisfaction, not based on anyone else's opinion of where you are. And what you do with this wheel is you shade in, starting at the center and working your way out. You shade in to represent your score of your level of satisfaction on a scale of 0 to 10. And when I say 0 to 10, 0 means that there is absolutely nothing in that area of your life that is going well for you, not a single thing in place. And a 10 is absolute perfection. You wouldn't change a thing. Just so you know, I don't believe in scoring a 10 in anything. Of course, there's always room for growth, always room for improvement. So what I work towards is more like an 8 or a 9, knowing that there's room for growth. But I definitely do have some folks score themselves a 10, and that's because their scale looks different. So a reminder of that too, you know, I'm going to give you some examples as we go through each category, but I've had a lot of people come to me and say, you know, well, what does an 8 in this area look like? Well, only you can identify what an 8 in that area looks like. And you are kind of going to continue to go back and use this tool. I recommend using it quarterly to continue to assess where you are and what changes occur, so you get to decide what the scale means. And you might even modify that over time as you realize there's greater opportunity for growth than you first realized. So this is something that can be modified, can be reused. It's not a one and done thing. But the whole idea is once you have shaded in the wheel of life, you are to determine if your wheel will roll or not. That's what we're trying to see here. Is your wheel going to roll, or is it a flat? Is it going to stop in its tracks because there is some area where there's a discrepancy, where there's a gap in your level of satisfaction or fulfillment that really needs your attention? So when I say balance, what I'm talking about is a balanced wheel. We know in vehicles how important it is to have our tires balanced, right? Same thing. I'm talking about a balanced wheel so that your wheel will roll. And what it draws our eyes to are those areas that we need to pull up a little bit to achieve maybe 7 all the way around the wheel, whatever that number may be, that would bring it to a point where it would actually move. So I want to walk you through each area of this wheel of life. If you were to download the wheel of life with the current categories listed, it seems pretty simple. However, I break it down even further. So there are currently 8 categories on there based on the version that is most up to date and I use today. And I pulled it up in front of me to reference so that I can go in order around. And if you are doing this exercise with me, maybe you go back and listen to this later and do this with me, that I'm going in order in a way that makes sense for you. So if you have this, great. If you don't, you can still easily be reflecting on this as I'm talking you through it. For each area of the wheel of life, I tend to break it down into subcategories because what I find is that the score that I want to assign to the area might not truly reflect how I feel. So for example, financial well-being, say we start there. I break financial well-being into 2 categories. There's my current financial state and whether or not what I'm able to do right now allows me to lead the lifestyle that I want to lead, versus subcategory 2 is the preparation for the future, because there's the current state and then there's the, well, what have I done to intentionally prepare for my future? Have I had a meeting with a financial planner? Am I investing, in stocks? Whatever it may be, there is a big difference between current financial state and future financial state and preparation. And if I were to just give one score, I don't feel like it would accurately reflect it. And I want to monitor more closely which one needs my attention. So what I do on my wheel is I physically print it out and I actually cut that sliver in half, and I label one current and one prep for future, and I shade in starting at 0 in the center and working my way out towards that outer edge, which again is 10. I'm going to shade in my current level of satisfaction in each of those areas. If you are not shading in with me right now, you're just listening, I want you to think about it. What's your level of satisfaction with your current financial situation and your prep for the future? Are they one and the same? Does one need more attention than the other? The next category that I look at is service. Service represents service to the community, giving back to the community in some way. And I really had a good question about this one time because there was an individual who had said that they had done a lot of service in the community for a very, very long period of time. And they were actually at a place in their life where they thought their family needed more attention than anything. And so they were satisfied with doing very little service in the community at this time. And they said, well, how do I rate that? What would that look like on a scale of 0 to 10? And I said, well, are you satisfied with where you are right now? And the answer was yes. So you would rate it high. You would not rate it low because you don't feel like you're doing anything in the service area. You would rate it high because you are satisfied with what you are doing. So keep that in mind as you're going through this. If you're happy with where you are, doesn't matter how anyone else would feel about it or the level of effort you're putting into it. If you're happy with where you are in that area, score accordingly. I do not break service down into any subcategories. So just giving back in the community, whether it is giving via time, whether you are at a spot in your life where you're able to make monetary contributions, whatever it may be, think about your level of satisfaction in service. The next category is health. And health is one that I break down into 4 subcategories. And I hope that those of you that are driving or in the shower are going through this and actually thinking about how you would rate these things, because I think automatically these numbers are going to pop out to you and it might bring attention very quickly to one area where suddenly that you need to focus. Health is broken into 4. That is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And this is, again, a perfect example of if I were to give an overall health score, I do not feel like it would accurately reflect how I'm really feeling, because I might be really strong in my mental, emotional, and spiritual, but not great in the physical. And I need to be able to see that visually on this graph. So make sure that you break it down into the categories that make sense for you and really consider how satisfied am I in that area. You can't help but think as you're doing it, well, what would it take for me to be more satisfied or fulfilled in that area? So for example, if I shade in, I'm at a 4 for physical health, I can't help but think, but what would it take for me to get to a 5 or a 6? What is that one next step I can take? That kind of happens naturally, which will lead perfectly into episode 5, talking about being growth-minded or goal-oriented and knowing kind of what to do with this tool after you focus on achieving balance. So going back to the health category, we have 4: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If you do not want to break it down into 4 categories, you absolutely don't have to. I just know that that works for me. The next category on the wheel of life is relationships. Relationships is another one that can be very complex, and I can feel very strong about one area of my life when it comes to relationships. Maybe it's my business relationships because I'm very focused on my career right now. Whereas I feel that my personal relationships are suffering because I'm not spending as much time with my friends. So, for example, Ashley and Lauren, my best childhood friends, I can go an entire year without speaking to them. We can, catch up, and it's like we're back in school again, and it's fine. We know that we're busy, but still, it's not okay. I would like to give them more attention. They deserve more attention. And so I really want to make sure when I am scoring myself in these categories that I'm honest with myself about, what I could be doing better. So in the relationships category, I usually break it down into your significant other, if you have one, your family, your friendships, and then professional relationships. So 4 categories for that one as well, and really consider the difference between them. And a lot of times we put more energy and effort into one type of relationship than others. And we might have to kind of choose one area of relationships at a time and be really careful about giving those folks attention. And maybe it's I try to reach out to Ash and Lauren once a quarter. Maybe that's okay because it's better than once a year, and it allows me to continue to build my professional relationships the way that I need to for the growth of my business. Just something to consider. The next category is physical environment. This one I do break down into 2 categories as well. There's home and then workplace. That might not be different for you. Maybe you do work from home. Maybe you just set up a space at your dining room table and that's where you work every day. When I'm talking about physical environment, I'm asking you about how you feel about the space in which you work and which you live. Is it safe? Is it secure? Is it comfortable? Is it organized in a way that makes sense to you? Do you like the space? Do you walk into it and feel good? Or is it something you walk into and you feel like it's chaos and unorganized, and before you even get started, you already feel like you're flustered? Think about that space. So physical environment, home, work, even if it's a dining room table, how do you feel about that dining room table and the way that you've set yourself up? If it's just one category, if you just want to do home, that's fine too. But how satisfied are you with your physical environment? And then we have fun and rec, which is consistently a very difficult one for me in life. I have to be very intentional about this one because it has almost always been the lowest score, the lowest level of satisfaction. I do like to make everything as fun as possible, but I don't always spend enough time on my hobbies or getting out and doing the traveling or hiking that I enjoy. And so fun and rec, you might choose to break down into categories related to hobbies or specific activities like you do or that you like to do, or you might leave it as one, fun and recreation, and give yourself a score. It is often one of the lowest for many people unless these are people who have specifically set aside time in their schedule and are very intentional about it. And then we're going to go into growth, a category of growth. We have personal and professional growth. So anything that you are intentionally doing for yourself to grow within your career, professionally, and that skill set versus personally, things that you're doing, maybe seeing a therapist or whatever it may be, mindfulness exercises, reflection, listening to these podcast episodes. There's going to be a lot of personal growth stuff in here too. How do you feel about the amount of personal and professional growth you are participating in or experiencing at this time? And last but certainly not least, number 8 of 8 is identity. And this is a very complicated one because everybody's identity is very different. And it is the one that's going to be unique to you. When you fill this one out, you're going to want to break it into the number of subcategories that you feel describe you. So, for example, are you a mom? How do you feel about who you are as a mother and what you're able to give your children? Are you an aunt? Are you a sister? Are you a friend? Are you a coach? Who are you? Think about your identity. This one might be a little complex for you, or it could just be you, one whole you, and that's okay too. But think about your current level of satisfaction in who you are within that role, and you would rate that as well. So again, we have 8 categories. I went through them all here. We have financial well-being, service, health, relationships, physical environment, fun and recreation, growth, and identity. And once you shade in those regions based on your level of satisfaction, you will very quickly see what needs your attention. It couldn't be more obvious. If you are not doing this in front of a piece of paper right now or looking at a computer screen, and you are just thinking through how would I rate these areas of my life, I do encourage you to jot down those numbers and take a look and see where there might be a discrepancy. Maybe you're 100% aware of it, and this exercise makes you face the reality of the fact you need to make some changes. And that's okay too. Sometimes I have folks say that. I knew that there was an issue here, but this kind of forced me to sit down and finally realize it's time something be done about it because there is such a significant difference in these areas. Now you understand what I mean when I'm talking about balance in life. Again, it's not about the amount of time spent. It's about prioritizing what needs your attention. So ultimately, after folks do the Wheel of Life exercise, I find that there are typically 2 or 3 areas that immediately stand out. And I don't focus on a category as a whole unless it stands out because, for example, maybe 3 out of the 4 areas of health are my lowest scores. So obviously health overall needs my attention. But I tend to look at the subcategories and say which 3 subcategories need the most attention at this time, and really consider what is my vision for improving in that area. What would it look like to achieve a 7? What would it look like to achieve a 9? And it flows so nicely into setting goals or specific growth milestones that you want to meet for yourself. So I really recommend that you take the time to do that. Thinking about daily practices that you can really use to help you navigate achieving balance in life, I was thinking through this, and beyond just prioritizing, not just prioritizing for long-term goals and that future vision, but short-term goals, the things that you know that in a month's time, I can really have a major impact on this area of my life. it really comes down to prioritizing. So if, career advancement is your current goal, it might take a focus temporarily, and you might choose to value that more than the other areas right now. And then, reassess after a quarter or after a year, and then go back and make the necessary changes. An idea for daily practice is really thinking about integration versus segmentation. And what I mean by that is there a way that you can integrate multiple areas into one to achieve growth in more than one place at a time? And an example of that might be, if I know I need to really work on my relationships with my family, and I really need to work on my physical health, I can integrate the two together by doing a daily walk with my family, or, a bike trip on the weekend. What can you do to take the two areas and merge them together so you're continuing to grow in both simultaneously, but it doesn't take up twice as much time? You see what I'm saying? If I'm trying to do personal growth, I'm going to stick it into a time where I'm doing mindless activities already, and I can be, absorbing new information, or I could be reflecting on different areas of my life. I shared with you guys in a previous episode that I do a lot of reflection when I'm driving, a lot of reflection podcasting when I'm in the shower, like any time where I'm not having to put a lot of thought into what I'm doing and you're kind of on autopilot. What is something you can integrate at that time where you are achieving growth in some area, but not taking up twice as much time by doing so? Versus when I say segmentation, it's something that needs your full attention, and you actually have to set aside time on the calendar in order to achieve those goals or the growth that you are trying to achieve. Things to look for, signs of imbalance in your life. This is pretty obvious for a lot of people. So if you are always stressed out, just always in a state of panic or chaos or stress, whatever it may be, that's a sign of imbalance. That's a sign that we need to sit down and reflect on how we can reprioritize things, realize what is actually realistic to have on your plate at one time, maybe remove yourself from some things, say no to some things, which has been really hard. That's been a journey for me, because it's always been about, harmony and keeping everyone happy around me. And I'll give you an example. I was a really, really heavy networker when I first started my business. To go from the education community to the business community and not know a lot of people, have many connections, spent a ton of time networking. I was at tons of events. Well, now that I'm busier, I actually have to, do the work and spend time with my clients, and I'm not able to go to as many events. And it's kind of become the expectation that I'm going to be out and about at these things. And I want to continue to foster growth in those relationships, but I have to be realistic about the amount of time that I can dedicate to it. So now I actually allow myself one major networking opportunity per week, where I used to do it constantly. I would have 3 or 4 things going on per week. Some months I can only achieve one networking opportunity per month. So I just really had to adjust and realize that saying no was going to have to be important for me in order for me to get, closer to balance. So again, that one sign of imbalance is that constant stress, just too much on your plate, always feeling like you can't catch up. Another is health issues. Your body tells you when it needs your attention, when you need to slow down a little bit. For me, of course, with my Lyme, it was a little different because there was a specific diagnosis connected to it. However, had it not been Lyme, I know that my body was still screaming for attention. I still was not getting enough sleep. I fell asleep 3 times while driving, and luckily did not get in an accident any of those 3 times. I caught myself, and that was the period of time where I was having to pull over and take a nap on the way to work each day. So being aware of health issues that are coming up from chronic stress, from having just, constant state of panic, those stress hormones really do impact your body. It impacts your memory. It impacts inflammation in your body. There are so many different things. I'm obviously not a doctor here, but we know bodies enough to know what a great impact stress can have. Relationship strains. If you're really struggling in relationships, personal or professional, and not really able to take the time to understand things from someone else's perspective or whatever it may be in building those relationships and making them stronger, you're just constantly frustrated with those people in your life. They're annoying you more than ever before. Something might be out of balance. Something might really be screaming for your attention at that time too. So chronic stress, unhappiness, health issues, relationship issues, all of these and so many more are signs that it's time to sit down and look at your wheel of life or what other tool you find to be helpful for you and really consider, what can I do to reprioritize what's important for me, help me to reach my vision for what success is in my life. I have shared with you that I think it's important that we really start here before we dig into leading others, because obviously leading yourself can be rather complicated. It's a lot of work to lead yourself effectively, and people are watching. People are watching how you manage your time. People are watching how you manage your stress, handle situations, respond to conflict, all of those things. So you are having an impact and influencing others without knowing it. So just think about that wheel of life in every single area. Financial decisions that you're making, that you're modeling for your family, is that defining what money means to them growing up in your household? And is that going to impact their, view of money in the future and the way that they approach decision making? Every single area of the wheel of life, when you're making decisions about those, you are also constantly modeling that for people in your life. So it's worth considering. I will mention again that reassessment is important. Do this self-evaluation using a wheel of life at least quarterly, I recommend. I think it is a great tool to measure your progress. If I say this quarter, I really want to focus on, my physical health, and I am very specific about what that looks like. And I'll talk in the next episode of, how I would even arrive at an appropriate goal for that. Then you are able to really see when you sit down a quarter later and say, okay, how well am I doing right now with my physical health? How satisfied am I? It's literally, there is a visual representation of your satisfaction. There's a numerical representation, knowing that I am high C on DISC. Obviously, I like things to be measurable. I think it's just a great way to really look at what growth is occurring and see the changes over time. You also want to be very mindful about changes that are occurring mid-quarter, throughout the year. And I said earlier, be honest with yourself. That can be really difficult because sometimes we don't want to face the reality of the situation we find ourselves in. I talked a lot in episode 3 about resilience and the types of things that I've had to work really hard to bounce back from, or I would say bounce forward from. And there were a lot of tough moments leading up to creating a plan to get me out of that situation. The realization that I had to make a plan and do something about it, or I would never get out of that situation. I would never achieve my vision of success for my life if I did not face reality. So being mindful is also important. I've talked about the importance of achieving balance in life and how that might be a little different than balance you've heard about in the past. Maybe it is a little bit more within reach when we see balance in relation to how we prioritize areas and not spending an equal amount of time in each area of life. I've broken down the wheel of life into different categories, so hopefully as you were listening, you were able to reflect a little bit on how you're feeling, about different areas and maybe even visualize some changes you'd like to see happen there. And I've talked about the difference between, integrating areas versus segmenting areas as you're creating a plan for yourself, and using self-assessment and reevaluation of this over time to continue to grow. So those are just some strategies that I think are really helpful in kind of navigating everything that is a part of life beyond just, that personal and professional bucket. I always want to give you a challenge, and I'm going to encourage you to take this balance challenge. And if you will take the time to do so, check out the Wheel of Life resource. I'd love for you to take the time to print it out and fill it out. Go back, listen to this episode in order to make it happen. If you have questions, please reach out and ask. I will be happy to help you fill it out. Make sure that if you've completed it, I know it's usually not something you want to share with the world, by the way. I know the first time that I did it, I think it's safe to say I was maybe a little bit embarrassed with some of the scores. I hadn't realized how unhappy I was the very first time I did it for myself. It's not usually something people want to share. Feel free to share, publicly, but if you want to share it directly with me, and, allow me to look at what achieving balance might look like for you and give you some ideas, I would love to hear from you. You can very easily reach out to us via social media. You could send an email to info@branchingoutpodcast.com. You could go to the website and submit in a contact form. There are so many different ways to get in touch. So for the Branching Out Challenge of the week, take some time, use the Wheel of Life to assess your current level of satisfaction in each area and determine if your wheel will roll as it is today. That's what I want to know. Will it roll? Chances are it won't. I think in the history of my 4 years doing this, I might have had one that would roll. But usually the first time someone does this, it could bring you back to reality. And so I find it to be very valuable. I want to invite you to also share this podcast with others. If there's someone that you think would benefit from really looking at how they're prioritizing their time and different areas of their life and trying to really achieve their vision, share this as a resource for them. See if it's a strategy that might be helpful. And I appreciate that. Well, I would like to encourage you to subscribe so that you get notifications every time a new episode comes out. Just a reminder that a new episode will be dropped every week on Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, always on Spotify first, and then it will drop to the other platforms after midnight on Friday, so you can find those on Saturday. And share on social media, invite other people to subscribe. Invite people to follow the Branching Out podcast, Branching Out with Sierra Facebook page. I'm trying to grow that following to 1,000 followers. We were just at about 500 when I started recording this episode, and episode 1 and 2 have officially dropped. So I hope to continue to grow each time those are released. Well, I thank you so much for your time. I do want to always say, I know that you have a lot on your plate. I know that we're all juggling a lot, and it means a lot to me if you've taken the time to make it this far in the episode and really set aside time for your own growth or even just to support me. It means the world. I do want to say thank you to all of you that have supported me thus far. I want to say thank you to Matthew Bear of Social Drive Media for all of his work on setting up the equipment, doing the editing, social media posts, everything it takes to put this on. Literally at the end of the day, all I'm doing is sitting down, doing the recording and walking away, and he's done the rest. So thank you for all of your efforts. I want to end with a quote from Rumi, who is a poet, who says, "Life is a balance of holding on and letting go." So as I think about that, I think it really does require both persistence in what matters and the ability to release things that are no longer serving us. And I think that aligns perfectly with today's episode. So I hope you found value in today's episode. I hope to hear from you. See you next time. And until next time, keep branching out.